Alright, YouTube, it's been a little while since I made my Fox News commentary. But at the end of that commentary, I made a promise, after I'd completely finished owning Fox News in every way possible, about their biased reporting on video games. I made a promise that I would attack some people on the other side of the political spectrum, too. First of all, to show that it's a widespread problem. That's the most important reason. Because it's not a partisan problem. You know, people on both sides are doing it, and that actually makes it a little bit more dangerous than it would be otherwise. But also to show that I'm not just doing this because of any personal bias, except in favor of video games maybe. So anyway, without any further ado, let's see what Hillary had to say back in 2005.
I'm here today as a parent and a senator, and along with my colleagues and so many of the advocates from around the country.
Alright, so when I first went back to look at this clip, I actually wasn't completely sure if I'd be able to do a video on it, because I hadn't watched it in some time. The moment I started watching it, though, like as soon as you see the sign on the front of her podium that says, like, protecting America's kids or whatever, you know, you immediately know, here we go again, you know? Now, and aside from that, the first line of her speech appeals to improper sources. I mean, she starts her speech with a logical fallacy. Like, who are her experts or whatever she called them? She doesn't ever say who they are.
We are determined to stop a situation in which video games with pornographic and violent content are being peddled to our children.
Now, the video games with violence and pornography that she's referencing right now is basically Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. This was made right after we discovered the hot coffee mod and all that, so when that scandal broke, this probably didn't seem to be such an unreasonable thing to say. Now we know that this type of thing does not happen often. But my biggest problem with what she said was the word choice. You know, her diction. She said that video games being peddled to children. Now look, it's one thing to say that a video game was sold to some children. I mean, it was rated M, which is, you know, 17-year-olds can buy it. Technically, not an adult. So she's not technically wrong. But to say that it's being peddled to children makes it sound like there's some sort of a conspiracy and that's being done very intentionally, which is unfair.
Today I'm announcing, along with my colleagues, Senator Lieberman and Bai, the Family Entertainment Protection Act. This bill will prohibit the sale of violent and sexually explicit video games to minors.
The first thing that jumps out at me in this clip is the name of the bill. The Family Entertainment Protection Act. Alright, now look, this is going to be almost as bad as what Jack Thompson was doing. You know, it's implying that there's some sort of a phantom menace out there that is threatening the family as a whole. Now, to be fair, she never explicitly says that the family is threatened by video games, but the name of the bill makes the implication pretty obvious, I think. Now, later in that, she uses some terms that are distressingly vague. She wants to ban games that are violent and or have sexual content. Now, what does that mean? You know, I mean, if she's talking about banning games, well, not banning, but making sure children can't see them, games where, like, you torture people, or games of hardcore pornography, okay, I don't think anybody is against that. However, if she's talking about violence like, you know, Crash Bandicoot, violence like Uncharted, then that's a problem, because those games definitely should be sold to teenagers. There's nothing that wrong about them. And of course, you know, she needs to define what she means by sexual content as well, because that could be a wide variety of things.
Video games are hot holiday items, and I understand that. They are certainly entertaining and even educational in many instances. They can help our children learn, they can increase hand and eye coordination, but it is also clear that there are games that are just not appropriate for children. And busy parents are looking for some guidance all the time, but especially during this hectic holiday season.
Wow, now that is something that I wish I could hear a lot more of from politicians. She actually lists, you know, I don't want to say all, but pretty many of the benefits of playing video games. And this makes her seem a lot more reasonable, really. Now, she began to worry me a second there when she started talking about how some games were not appropriate for children, but I think I'll let that slide, because those are like your adults-only rated games. You don't see too many of them, but, overall, that segment was actually very good. And she even said at some point, the games are, in fact, very entertaining, which, I don't know if it's true, but it makes it sound like she's played a lot of video games. So she's doing pretty well for herself for that last clip.
Now, as you can see from the posters that we have displayed here, many games contain content that is deeply disturbing. It's almost routine in popular games for players to spray other people with Uzis, to drive over pedestrians, to kill police officers, to attack women, and in some cases, even to engage in cannibalism.
Now, what she said in that last clip deserves a much more mixed response, because while everything that she said can be found in some popular games or a popular game, it's not fair to say that it's routine for popular games to do that type of thing, like she said. If you play a Mario game, you're not going to encounter that type of stuff, but those games sell millions. If you play Uncharted, which was not at the time, but if you play Uncharted, you're not going to encounter that type of stuff. You're not going to encounter things that bad in many popular games. So it's not fair to characterize them all that way.
Players commit gruesome acts like these using top-of-the-line graphics in stunningly realistic detail.
Now that sounds amusingly like an advertisement for Grand Theft Auto. I wonder.
Now, it is up to adults whether they wish to expose themselves to this type of violence and pornography. But we have 40 years of research to tell us that violent media is bad for our children. According to the most comprehensive statistical analysis yet conducted, violent video games increase aggressive behavior.
Alright, well, she started off strong enough. She made it clear that she didn't want to ban all video games for everybody, so at least she hasn't gone off the deep end. But then, she goes back to doing what Fox News did, what Jack Thompson did, and she says that all of the studies for the past 40 years have shown yada yada yada. Okay, look, I said it in the Fox News commentary, and I will say it again. The studies are not consistent in showing that video games cause violence. It's literally like a 50-50 split. And I'll make a whole other video on why the accuracy of these studies is so bad. But for now, just take my word for it and look up the studies yourself. They vary in what they say.
Violent video games increase aggressive behavior as much as lead exposure decreases children's IQ scores.
I wasn't aware that violence and IQ were measured on the same scale.
Everybody knows lead poisoning is bad for children. Oh, I want everybody to know that exposure to violent video games is also bad for children.
So at this point, her argument is really beginning to fall apart because she's using multiple logical fallacies at the same time. First of all, she's comparing apples to oranges. You can't just compare lead poisoning to video games. Secondly, if you follow her reasoning, her analogy to its logical conclusion, it contradicts her. She is saying that we shouldn't let kids play video games because it's like lead poisoning. But lead poisoning also is bad for adults. So following her logic, we should also ban video games for adults, which she said previously we shouldn't do. So her reasoning doesn't even make sense within the context of what she is saying, let alone reality.
There was testimony before the Senate Commerce Committee in 2000 that playing video games, violent video games, accounts for a 13 to 22% increase in teenagers' violent behavior.
Okay, it's great that someone testified that, but who testified it? Why should we listen to this person? And more importantly, just because someone testifies something doesn't make it true. Like, I could testify that Hillary Clinton blew up an orphanage. That doesn't make it true all of a sudden.
Yet we know that such games are easily accessible. A recent study by the National Institute on Media and the Family found that children between the ages of 9 and 14 were able to purchase M-rated video games nearly 50% of the time.
So her source is media and the family. Yeah, I'm sure they don't have any bias at all. Now, aside from that, the rest of what she said was maybe a valid point at the time. I didn't go to GameStop too often back 2005, so I honestly can't say. But I do know that at some point in the past, it was pretty easy for young kids to buy M-rated games. And yeah, in some ways that's a problem. Now that has mostly been addressed by now.
Furthermore, nearly a quarter of retailers didn't even understand the ratings they were supposed to enforce. And only half of the stores surveyed train employees in the use of the ratings.
At first, that statistic may seem very surprising, but I think that they are most likely including stores like Walmart, where they do sell video games, but it's not the main point of the store. If employees at those stores who do sell video games don't know how the ratings work, that is a problem. So she's right there, giving her the benefit of the doubt and saying that that's only looking at employees who are actually involved in the selling of video games.
This legislation is not about government censorship or regulation of content. Quite simply, it is about protecting children and empowering parents. We need to treat violent video games the way we treat tobacco, alcohol, and pornography. We know that these products are damaging to children, and we need to give parents the tools to keep them out of kids' hands.
And here she finally falls back on what it seems like every anti-video game person falls back on. She goes and says that it's all about protecting kids and the family. Now that's an old cliche. I don't think I need to explain that too much. I also really don't think I need to explain too much about why the comparisons to drug and alcohol abuse are unfair.
So the time has come to put on the brakes and to just insist that parents know what material is in the video games their children play, and to pass laws with real teeth that will send a clear message that we really do mean business.
Hillary's ill-fated bill died in committee, presumably because no one wanted to become enemies with the person who, at the time, appeared likely to become the Democratic nominee for president in 2008. Now, a lot of you will be very surprised to hear me say that this is way more significant than any of the Fox News commentaries, because Hillary could do more damage than Fox News, than Glenn Beck, than Jack Thompson ever could. And the reason for that is because Hillary literally almost was elected president. She almost won the Democratic nomination, and 2008 was a very good Democratic year, so she probably would have been elected president. Glenn Beck, he's never going to get that far. Jack Thompson's not even a politician. Fox News, okay, they may influence millions of people, but they cannot pass anything. Hillary could. She failed, but only barely. And she theoretically could still try to pass something. And she's never renounced to these views. So she is much more of a threat than Fox News ever could be.
If you put it just really simply, these violent video games are stealing the innocence of our children.
Oh, come on!